Shout out to Randy who gave me the heads up on the Gryphon. It's a new German fantasy series on Prime Video that I'd never heard of, but it is also from the producers of Dark. So instantly, that had my curiosity piqued. It's only 6 episodes, so I binged it. But should you? To save humanity from the Gryphon's claws, outcast Mark must confront his family's dark legacy and enter a deadly battle in the parallel world of the Black Tower. So this is a proper fantasy series, filled with mystical beings and alternate worlds, along with monsters and creatures, and then is infused with a Gen X-centered soundtrack and just a little bit of teen angst. We follow Mark and meet him when he's about 5, but most of the time we spend with him when he's 16. The year is 1994. He's got past family trauma and drama, which makes his relationships with his mom and older brother a bit strained. And he's mostly a loner, awkward and shy, and certainly not popular at school. His father passed down family lore that they are the bloodline of these sort of warriors and protectors, keeping a creature known as the Gryphon in a realm called the Dark Tower. It doesn't really resemble a tower, but that's just the name, so I went with it. Now, the Gryphon is searching for a way to travel between worlds, so it can conquer everything, and Mark's lineage has been working through generations to prevent that from happening. As I had said, this is only 6 episodes, but they're each just about an hour long, so there's a lot of content and world building that we get to experience. The characters, they're set up fairly well, but we don't get all of the development on them right up front. Over the course of the episodes, more and more detail is gained, so that by the end, I felt a connection and concern for all of the main players. Now, when the series is taking place in our world, most everything is grounded and not fantastical, but there's the element of a sort of treasure hunt. Mark is searching for ways to get to the Dark Tower realm, so he has to work out all the info from this massive book that he has called the Chronicle, and his dad had left that for him. Now, in this aspect, it feels a bit like the Goonies at times because Mark follows the clues and works out the puzzles in order to reach his goal. Now, there are a couple of supporting characters that help to round out the story, and they also add drama and that angst that I had mentioned. Mimo is a dude who works at Mark's record store, and they have a mildly antagonistic relationship, but Mimo is fiercely loyal and spirited. So once he's on board with an idea, he goes full out, which then makes for some fun action and interactions. Becky's the love interest of Mark, and even though they haven't known each other for more than a week or so, they click, and I really like their dynamic. And they're not always in agreement, and there's also a ton of frustration that we witness, making their relationship engaging and tumultuous at times. But Becky also brings an inquisitiveness to the story, complementing Mark and also then contributing to some story complications. Mark's mom, his therapist, and his older brother also play key roles, and while they're not constant presences within the story, their inclusion really is vital to everything that we see. Now, for the fantasy element, when Mark is able to see the Dark Tower realm, there are some really great-looking creatures that are created with prosthetics and makeup. The practical effects in this series are amazing and they're awesome. I mean, the creatures we mainly see are these stone-like demon-looking beings. They're warriors, and their costuming is sort of post-apocalyptic trash heap, where they're wearing this ragtag assortment of just torn clothing and fabric. Now, there is one dude who has a Nike shoe for a shoulder pad, so it does raise questions on where he got that. There are also some other creatures that we get to see in this. There's this sort of faceless, alien-looking creature who has some awesome abilities, and then there are also some bug-like things that are just nightmare fuel. And some of them are digitally created, but others are practical, and I am continually impressed with what the show was able to create. Now, when the different lands of the Dark Tower realm are shown, these vary on their impressiveness. Some look and feel like they are better suited on Land of the Lost or maybe some episode of the original Star Trek series, with lighting that looks harsh and fake, and then the landscapes that just look fairly plain. Now, there are some areas that are beautifully captured, along with some backgrounds that look just dark and ominous. So when we're shown the Dark Tower realm, we never know quite what we're going to get. So some is impressive, others are just wanting in a huge way. Now, I think the show gets a little distracted sometimes with the teen angst portion. And while it can seem tedious at points, by the end, some dramatic arcs have been established, and they wouldn't have worked without that buildup of the angsty turmoil. But I also appreciate that the teen back-and-forth romance, it doesn't get too prominent within the narrative. I mean, it feels like a tangent sometimes, but it doesn't go down the rabbit hole that the story forgets what's going on. Now, I'd mentioned that the soundtrack was awesome, and if you're a Gen Xer like me, you can appreciate the song choices that we get to hear. I mean, there's Nirvana, Metallica, Smashing Pumpkins, Radiohead, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, and then some German stuff that I'd never heard before. The inclusion of the music works well as a story device, and then it's also set up nicely so that the music can actually become a sort of character within the scene. Now, one of the biggest questions I have in the series involves a certain race of beings that live in the Dark Tower realm. It's not explained on how they got there or why they're there, but it did feel a little odd to have their inclusion without context. Now, maybe more is going to be given in future seasons, but it definitely was a standout, huh, moment for me. The pacing of this takes a little while to get established, with the first episode giving us a lot of information without a ton of context. So by the middle of the second episode, though, everything was really starting to click and gain a good momentum. Now, as much as I enjoyed the premise and even some of the setup, I wasn't totally sold on the series until about halfway through. But then I found myself incredibly invested in the characters, especially Mark, and then his quest. That was the right amount of intrigue, but also we were getting answers. And then the show, it includes twists and reveals that keep the plot interesting and engaging. And there are many moments that feel a bit cheesy within this, either in the visuals or maybe the story, but if you stick it out, you're probably going to find yourself hooked on what's happening and chomping at the bit for more. Now, normally I only watch in the original language of a movie or a show, and then I use the subtitles. For some reason, though, Amazon defaulted to English as the dub. And let me just say that I immediately paused and switched the audio back to German with English subtitles because it was not good in the slightest. I don't normally advocate for dubbing anyway, but with this, I encourage you to actively avoid it. So overall, The Gryphon is an engaging fantasy series filled with intrigue, peril, and world-hopping excitement. While the practical effects are phenomenal, some of the sets and settings leave a lot to be desired, giving a location a fake feeling which then breaks the story illusion. Brooding and angsty characters help to build the dramatic tension, creating scenarios that are captivating and mysterious by leaning heavily into the fantastical to exploit the lore. The series takes a bit to get into, but once it's established, the ride is adventurous, energetic, and thrilling. There's sex, a little nudity, a lot of profanity, and a bunch of violence. I give Season 1 of The Gryphon 3.5 out of 5 couches. So have there been any fantasy series or movies that you've seen recently that are worth recommending? Let me know about them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.